What if the greatest enemy to your success isn't the system or your circumstances, but a part of yourself? A hidden voice you don't hear, a quiet resistance that lives beneath your ambition. You work, you push, you strive, and yet something within pulls you back. You procrastinate, you self-sabotage, you walk away just before the finish line. Why? Because success is not just a climb, it's a confrontation. And the most powerful force you will ever confront is your own shadow. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, the unconscious part of you that houses everything you deny, suppress, or ignore. Not just your anger or jealousy, but your unmet needs, your fear of change, even your buried greatness. The shadow isn't just darkness, it's potential, repressed. You don't sabotage because you're weak. You sabotage because part of you is terrified of what happens if you win, terrified of who you'll become or who you'll leave behind. Success isn't just gain, it's transformation, and the shadow fears annihilation. That's why you forget deadlines. That's why you destroy relationships that nurture you. That's why the path to self-mastery feels like walking through fire. Because it is. Every time you level up, your shadow fights to pull you back to familiarity. Because familiar equals safe, even if it's miserable. We build identities around our wounds, around our trauma, around failure. I'm the one who always falls short. I'm not meant for more. These stories protect us from risk, but they also cage us. When you get too close to freedom, the shadow whispers, "You don't deserve this." When you get too close to love, it murmurs, "They'll leave like the others." When you stand at the edge of something great, it screams, "This isn't who you are." So you step back, you shrink, you self-sabotage. Not because you want to fail, but because part of you is still trying to survive a past that no longer exists. But here's the truth the world rarely tells you. Your shadow isn't your enemy, it's your neglected ally. It contains your drive, your power, your voice. The rage you suppress is the fire you need to set boundaries. The envy you deny is the map to your true desires. The part of you that's scared, that's the part closest to growth. Most people try to silence their shadow, ignore it, shame it. But what you resist doesn't disappear. It festers. It finds other ways to emerge, through sabotage, addiction, explosive emotions, chronic indecision. Healing begins not with light, but with integration. You must turn toward the part of you that you fear, the part that embarrasses you, the part that holds you back, not to destroy it, but to understand it, to listen, to learn what it needs. Because your shadow always has a reason, and once you give it a voice, it no longer needs to scream. Think about the times you've walked away from something good, not because it wasn't right, but because it felt unfamiliar. The job opportunity you didn't take, the connection you ghosted, the project you abandoned. You told yourself it wasn't the right time, that you weren't ready. But under the excuses was a deeper truth. Comfort in pain was easier than the unknown of success. The mind prefers repetition over reinvention. It would rather loop old patterns than risk new ones. Because even the worst patterns are predictable, and predictability feels like control. The shadow doesn't sabotage to destroy. It sabotages to preserve. It believes it's protecting you from exposure, from judgment, from the terror of truly showing up in the world. Because real success isn't just about money or praise, it's about visibility. And visibility means vulnerability. To succeed is to be seen. And if you've ever been punished, ignored, or humiliated for being yourself, then being seen feels like danger. So your shadow builds defenses, cynicism, sarcasm, perfectionism. You become the critic before anyone else can be. You kill the dream before the world has the chance to reject it. And yet, the desire to grow never dies. It flickers. It waits. It asks again and again. What if you stopped betraying yourself? What if the old patterns aren't protecting you anymore but preventing you? This is where transformation begins, not in some euphoric breakthrough, but in small acts of radical honesty, in catching yourself mid-sabotage and asking, what am I really afraid of? In noticing the stories you've inherited, stories that no longer belong to you, and in replacing those stories with something more true. You don't become powerful by denying your darkness. You become powerful by making peace with it, by realizing that the very things you thought made you broken might be the source of your deepest strength. If you feel this tension between who you've been and who you could be, it means you're waking up. Most people never do. They live out the same year 70 times and call it a life. But you're here, reading, reflecting, which means your transformation has already begun. And if this message speaks to something buried in you, don't let it stay buried. Share it. Let someone else know they're not alone in the war inside their mind. Comment with the shadow you're learning to face. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the depths most fear to enter. You don't need fixing, you need remembering. Remembering who you were before the world taught you to fear your own power. Integration is not a one-time event, it's a lifelong practice. It happens when you notice your resistance and meet it with curiosity instead of shame. It happens when you show up even while afraid, when you take the risk anyway, when you stop waiting to feel ready and start acting like someone who already is. And slowly, something shifts. The voice that once said you can't begins to whisper, maybe you can. You build evidence that you are not your past, that fear doesn't have to mean no, that discomfort isn't danger, it's transformation. The world around you will still offer distractions, dopamine hits, shiny goals, external validation, but you'll begin to see through them, not because they're worthless, but because they can't give you what you're truly looking for: self-respect, alignment, inner peace. And this is what it means to become unstoppable. Not because you feel fearless, but because you've learned to walk beside your fear, to take your shadow by the hand and say, we're doing this together. Most people want confidence, but confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you earn by taking the next step without knowing the outcome. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to prove your worth, you start living like someone who already has it. This is how you escape the loop of self-sabotage. Not by force, not by perfection, but by presence. By returning to yourself again and again until you remember that you were never broken. You were just taught to be afraid of your own power. There's a strange peace that comes when you stop running from your darkness. You start to understand that your flaws are not failures, they're fragments. Parts of you that need understanding, not punishment. You begin to own your contradictions. The part of you that wants to succeed and the part that fears what success will cost. The ambition and the self-doubt. The brilliance and the hesitation. You learn to hold both. This is integration. Not a clean, linear process, but a dance. One day you fall, the next you rise. One day you sabotage, the next you choose differently. But over time, the choosing becomes easier. The shame grows quieter. The clarity grows louder. Eventually, you stop asking for permission. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop diluting yourself to be digestible. And that's when something radical happens. You no longer fear your own potential. You start acting on your ideas instead of overthinking them. You pursue love without needing to earn it. You take risks without needing a guarantee. You live not from fear of rejection, but from alignment with your values. Because you're no longer driven by the need to be enough. You already are. This is the shadow's gift. Not destruction, but liberation. Not silence, but integration. And from that wholeness comes a kind of power no one can give you or take away. So if you're still here, it means something inside you is ready. Don't let it fade. Let it guide you. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, because each week we go deeper into the places most minds avoid. Not to escape the darkness, but to find the strength inside it. The shadow is not your enemy, it's your key.